The all-new Fanatec Gt2 European Series comes to Hockenheim this weekend. Races 3 and 4 of the championship season, and track conditions very different for the opening race compared to what we had for free practice and qualifying yesterday. Glorious conditions for a Friday. Damp, chilly, overcast for Saturday. Morning rain, at least for the moment, has stopped. The circuit is still damp. Now, whether we get any gamblers that think about slicks, I rather doubt. They might do that tyre change in the pit stops, but that's another factor for what's going to be a 50-minute race with almost every car having 2 drivers. The regulations do permit you to go solo if you wish, and the cars making their way round to the grid ready for the rolling start. Pit stop window 20 to 30 minutes, 78 seconds for a pit stop. And there you can see the weather conditions. The rain is forecast. There's a bit of drizzle still falling as the grid takes shape, and track temperature is on the chilly side, that's for sure. David Addison and Chaz Draycott trackside, looking forward to what promises to be a lively race. It's a new category. Entries are still growing all the time, but it promises to be a very interesting race, this, especially given the variety of car that we have, and indeed the racing that we saw a few weeks ago at Monza. The Hockenheimring is, of course, the Grand Prix circuit with that fast run up towards the tight turn 3, the long sweep of the parabolic up towards the Spitzkehrer hairpin into that middle sector, down through the first of the 2 arenas, the old faithful stadium at the end of the lap. And it's a circuit that has its tight bits, its fast bits, and its pinch points as well, such as the hairpin. So 4.5 kilometres long, 17 turns in all. It's a circuit that is going to keep the drivers, Chaz, very busy indeed.
Yes, it is. And you mentioned there the stadium sections of this track. I really love the fact that it's almost like a repeat of itself. You've got the first sort of shallower, newer stadium section where they've got a long, fast right into a slow left, and then they've got to work on the exit out of that. And then, as you called it, the Old Faithful as well, towards the end of the lap. It's almost as if they said, right, if you've not got the move done here, have another go. Yeah, try it again. Exactly. But obviously different camber, much narrower road there as well.
Now let's go down to the grid. Pole position is the Audi that Peter Gellings will start, and after the pit stops, Bert Langin will take it over, and Bert Langin is with Gemma Scott.
Bert, obviously down here on the front row, exactly where you want to be. You're no stranger to the circuit here at Hockenheim either, whereas quite a few of your competitors are.
Yes, of course, because like Peter, it's the first race for him here in Hockenheim. We did a test day, so that was good. And even that he did yesterday, the pole position is like a small miracle. But I think for somebody, and now in the rain, it will be a very difficult race in the first part of the race. So it will be a surprise. I'm surprised what is going to happen.
Obviously, you've raced here in GT1 plenty of times, so you've raced here in the wet before. What can we expect into these damp conditions, but slightly drying?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for them, also for us. But the times that we drove GT1, also I remember it was with Toto Wolff and Karl Wendlinger, so it's already a long time ago. So it's a fast track, it's slippery, so we will see the first 20 minutes.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Bert.
Thank you.
Come across with me. Good luck, have a good race. We're going to come across to our second place, car number 7 here, of course, with Christopher Lenz, who's just standing by here. Christopher, you have much experience here at Hockenheim?
I drove in GT Open once and once in the Fanatec series, yes. I'm quite confident with this track. And
have you driven here in the wet?
Yes, last year. Yeah. I hope I will have a little advantage to the others. Yeah.
And of course, you guys are leading the AM Championship coming into this weekend.
It's my first race with this car, and I don't hope it's the last one, but yeah, we will do our best to do the podium, and yeah, full attack.
Have a great race. Let's come back this way, because just behind us here is our current championship leader, Mark Patterson, who raced in Monza, won the first race, I believe it was, in Monza, and racing with him, of course, Anders, who's standing by. We'll grab a quick chat with Anders. These guys are no strangers to GT racing, of course, but it is the first time that they've raced here and the Hockenheim circuit. Anders, first time here in Hockenheim, despite all of your experience, and for Mark, despite all of his experience, the first time here as well.
Yeah, it's quite impressive that he raced for more than 25 years and never been racing on German soil, so that's quite interesting. But he's doing a super great job, and I'm super proud of him. He's adapted so quickly. That's very nice. I'm so happy.
And to see you guys coming into this weekend as championship leaders as well.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise. We didn't do a lot of testing or preparation for the first race, but we had the pace in Monza, and it seems that we have the pace here as well. So we just keep on doing our job and don't change anything specific.
And what's the strategy for this race?
Well, I think it'll dry up super quick, and I see every car is on the rain tire, so I think after 20 minutes, as soon as the window is open, everyone will jump in and change the tires and drive out.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
Thank you.
Back to you, David, for the moment.
Gemma, thanks very much. So yes, Anders Fjordbach and Mark Patterson won the opening race at Monza. Didn't do quite so well in race 2, finished 4th in that, largely because the car lost a bit of ground in the final stint. But the grid starting to take shape, pole position on the inside line, and it's going to be, we understand, a rolling start. We've not had any suggestion that there's going to be a safety car start, so a conventional start is what we are anticipating. Down towards the back of the grid, you've got David Fairbrother starting in the Toro Verde GT Lamborghini, the distinctive green Lamborghini, which had all sorts of strife at Monza with the brakes seizing on. It didn't get into the second race. It's been off the road quite a lot this weekend as well. David Fairbrother will start. Jordan Witt is the driver that will take over that car, and they are desperately hoping for not just better fortunes than at Monza, but for fortunes. Aurelius Rustica there on board, and he's going to start in the Porsche that he shares with Michael Vergers. But having just talked about Jordan Witt's prospects for the race, let's hear what he thinks, because Jordan is with Gemma.
Jordan, it's not been an easy start to the weekend for yourself and David, with David having a bit of a moment yesterday.
Yeah, definitely, you know, these things happen, but we didn't have the best testing session, so we didn't really have much time in the car, so I can't really blame David for that. It's one of those mistakes. I could have made it, but, you know, it happened to be him, so yeah, I think the only way we can go is forward now from where I'm looking, so yeah, we'll see what happens.
And of course, unfortunately, you are starting a fair way back. There's a few cars to get through to get up into the front end of the grid, but how easy is it to overtake here?
Yeah, by the looks of things, it's going to be fairly easy, I think. You know, it's just like any other track. Try and make them make a mistake and then just keep going forward from there.
Excellent stuff. And it's, again, first time for you here?
Yeah, first time here, so yeah, I'm really enjoying it, so yeah, can't wait to get going.
Excellent stuff. Well, best of luck to yourself.
Cheers,
and David. He's looking very relaxed in the car.
Oh, he is, yeah, he's loving it.
Cheers, Jordan. Back to you, David.
And a relaxed way from David Fairbrother, who hopes to get into the race this time around, because it was, as I say, at Monza that the car not only had to be hoiked off the grid, but while it was an operation that was taking some time, we had the start delayed. There was no way to push the car. It had to be lifted. So it was a big problem there. But Jordan Witt very quick. And again, we have the fascination, Chaz, here of differing pace of differing drivers. So what you see in the first stint isn't always replicated in the second.
Yeah, and that's one of the most interesting things about this sort of racing. Like you say, you could have somebody that's running away at the front at the start of the race, come the pit stop. After that, they could then get reeled in by a pair of drivers or a driver that is just quicker than them naturally, just behind. You know, it could come down to the car later on in the race as well. There's so many different factors to think about over a race like this, and that's what makes it all the more interesting to watch. And in fairness, you know, looking back at Monza, as you mentioned about the Lamborghini with the brake season on, they're probably quite lucky that it was the Lamborghini that did that, because it's the sort of car, as most of these are, that looks fast even when it's standing still.
This is true, and that's a quick car, the KTM, very light. Sedi Samani was rapid at Monza, and there are a couple of cars we should just mention, with 1 minute to go to the start, that have got grid penalties. One of them is the KTM number 17 that Hubert Trunkenpolz will start. These are grid drops because of what are called behavioural warning points. So if you transgress a regulation, like, for example, speeding in the pit lane or crossing the pit exit white line, then you get a behavioural warning point. And if you get 3, then you get a grid drop. So Trunkenpolz has got 1. Another driver who has got 3 behavioural warning points and therefore a 5-place grid drop is a certain Stefan Rattel, the promoter of the championship, and therefore Greg Masters, the chairman of the stewards, showing no favouritism in giving Stefan a penalty. And indeed, we wish Greg well in the new job that he's bound to inherit on Monday if he gets hoiked out of the stewards' room for being unkind to Stefan. But no, it's all done properly, and Stefan was done at Monza for crossing the pit exit white line and speeding in the pit lane here, so he goes to the back of the grid. But Stefan enjoys his racing, so we'll probably relish, actually, the prospect now of trying to make progress forward. The whole premise of the GT2 car is that they look good and they sound good and they're great for the gentleman racers, and also the pro driver can get something out of them, but they don't have too much aero, so they slide around a little bit.
Yeah, just, I mean, visually you would think they did have more because they've got the huge wings, the massive splitters, you know, compared to, say, a GT3 car. They've gone even chunkier. And I mean, the rear wing assembly on the Audi R8 is just, it's an absolute art form, that thing. But yeah, you're right. You know, they're a lot more lively. They're a lot more what we call a driver's car. They have this ability and this behavior mid-corner to move around a lot more. But the thing is, when a car has that, the driver then gets to feel that as well. And as a driver, if you're just looking to go out there and race, it's surely more enjoyable. You can see we've got even the Porsche in there as well, actually, which is the GT2 version of that car. It's almost like a conversion from the original as it started out, but yeah, it's great to see another manufacturer on the grid as well.
Absolutely, and Aurelius Rustica running that car in pseudo martini colours. You were on board a moment ago with Stefan Rattel, who shares with Luca Piri, who's been a GT racer for many, many years, and is a neighbour of Stefan's in Italy. They didn't realise they were neighbours until the first lockdown, and they got chatting over the garden wall, and they discovered that one races GT cars, the other promotes the sport, so they then bought sims to race one another across the garden wall, as it were, and the friendship blossomed, and then they've hooked up to actually go racing in a car. But Luca Piri goes back to the FIA GT Championship under Stefan Rattel's stewardship. The car's here coming through the Spitzkehrer hairpin out of the Parabolica. There you see the blue and white Audi that Mark Patterson will start, the South African driver. That is the evocative liveried Porsche Aurelius Rustica, who shares with the Dutch driver Michael Vergers, and you know that when Michael gets behind the wheel of the car, it's going to be very, very quick. Aurelius Rustica, an experienced driver, long distance races, but hasn't raced for a little while, but went well at Monza, did a good job in the Porsche. Third in the opening race, and backed that up for Speed Factory Racing with a third in the second race. So the grid might be a small one, but it's a category that is still building, and again, it is aimed at giving the drivers plenty of track time. 2 free practice sessions, qualifying sessions, long races, co-driver to share the cost. Peter Gellings then starts on pole position, Christoph Ulrich with him at the front of the grid, the Belgian alongside the Swiss driver. Sedi Samini lining up for third on the grid with Mark Patterson for company. Then it's Chris Rosenberger's KTM, and newcomer to the series, Oliver Freimut, man with a big Renault history, lining up 6th, ahead of Aurelius Rustica and Rupert Aschberger in his KTM. 9th on the grid is where you find David Fairbrother for Toro Verde GT, and the penalised Hubert Trunkenpolz is alongside with Stefan Rattel in the LP Racing, Luca Piri Racing Audi at the rear of the grid. 50 minutes of racing then, clock starts when we get over the timing line. 20 to 30 minutes is the pit stop window. A pit stop is 78 seconds, but if you are in the top 3 in the championship in your class, you get extra time in the pit. So Ulrich, for example, and Gellings there on the front row of the grid, one is in the AM, one is in the Pro-Am class, they both carry an extra 10 seconds in the pits. If you are second in that previous race, you get 7, and third nets 5. So you get the extra so-called compensation time, and it therefore means that the interest is going to be how easy it is to make up that lost ground then. So top 3, you carry the compensation time into the next race. Pole position is Peter Gellings then, who will hand that car over to the experienced Bert Longin. He's way in advance of Christoph Ulrich though, as they come out of the Sud Curve, then up towards the line. Peter Daly, the race director, gives the go-ahead, so the lights go green, we go racing. Gellings gets the drop on everybody as they head down towards turn 1, the Nord Curve. Oliver Freimut dives up the inside, and Mark Patterson gets up the curb. Just about got away with that. He's about to get attacked by Chris Rosenberger there, and Aurelius Rustica in the Porsche gets up on the inside line. I have a horrible feeling that was about to spell disaster, but they all survived turn 1. It is Peter Gellings in the lead then as they turn right then, out of turn 2 for the first time.
Yes, indeed. The Lamborghini looked a little bit hesitant down the inside there. It was almost as if he was thinking, should I go for this? Hang on, it's wet. But he still did it. Managed not to make contact, which was the important thing there. Got out of it enough to then hit the curve. Oh, the 7's around already.
That's all
right from the front of the pack. And it didn't look like it was making much of an effort to get going again. We've got the other Lamborghini absolutely roaring its way around the outside of the Porsche there, keeping him nice and close to the left-hand side, but with the 7 dropping off early, I'm just looking in the background to see if he gets back going again, because it looked like, to me like it came to a stop almost 4 wide. The KTM did get going again.
And
More
there's
contact.
the inevitable contact. Yeah, exactly. That's Freimuth again on Patterson. Christoph Ulrich's problem in the KTM on that wet grass is getting the traction to get off it, because it is going to be very, very boggy. I think he has got going. David Fairbrother, again, new to the circuit, is doing a ripper job here, carving his way up through the traffic. Oliver Freimuth chasing after him. But significantly, look at this. Mark Patterson is dropping back. Class championship leader. He's out wide there as well, look. So losing pace, all of which has got to be brought back by Anders Fjordbach in the second stint. But that car does not suffer from an extra amount of time in the pit. So they're going to benefit from that, plus Fjordbach's pace. It's going to be really interesting, this.
Yeah, that's one thing you have to really consider as well, is when you are the first driver in the car, anything that you do is then a consequence for the second driver getting in the car.
Yeah.
It must be quite frustrating in a series like this, being the second driver, watching the other guy. If he does anything wrong, you've then got to hold him accountable for it. But at the same time, makes it all the more exciting for us. We've got the Lamborghini as a bit of a cork in the bottle, as you'd say, David, at the moment, just coming out of the left-hand hairpin. You can see he's even getting on the brakes here. But what happened to the 33 Audi was, he just went for the inside line. And I mean, we've seen it all morning, even in the Clios that we were watching before. They were taking the wet line further away from the apex around the outside. He seemed to just think there was some grip there, and as soon as he hit it, straight on and around he goes. But look, going for it now down the inside of the Lambo.
That's Mark Patterson then, gets the drive off the Sud curver and will go through then out of turn 17. So he makes the move, he goes through on the inside line, back up into 4th place. 5th is Freimuth, 6th is Rustica, there 7th is Chris Rosenberger. Now, Chris Rosenberger has a good pedigree before he came into the KTM crossbow battle of rallying, both in modern rally cars and historic rally Porsches. So if anybody can get his hat on in these conditions, it should be Chris Rosenberger. But Peter Gellings is the race leader, and on the opening lap, amazingly, he's pulled out 8 seconds. Everybody else is busy squabbling behind, but Gellings is away and gone, helped in part by Christoph Ulrich hurling the car off the road. And the incident from earlier on, which involved Mark Patterson and also the car of Oliver Freimuth, has been noted by the stewards. I'll have a look and decide whether anybody was at fault or whether it was just one of those things. But right now, Peter Gellings is doing a very good job consolidating that lead and trying to build the lead as Rustica gets up past Freimuth. Porsche goes ahead of Lamborghini, and that is Ulrich, who is off now at the exit of, is that turn 1?
Yeah, turn 1, I believe. He's just pulled it over. I'm not sure whether that's related to the issue that he had on the first lap there, but a real shame to see him drop out so early. I was just looking at the front left of the Lamborghini as well. The contact that we saw into the hairpin earlier has really made the front left of that car look very grumpy, as here goes the number 5 Porsche around the outside of the number 3 Audi.
And there was a big squeal of tyres, and that was why. That's Seni Sarmini from second place who's gone around. That was the squeal. So the second place KTM, blimey, Peter Gellings is having a charmed life. Any KTM that gets near him suddenly spins off. Sarmini rejoins. Stefan Rossini will take over that car in the second stint. But Peter Gellings' advantage will be even bigger now. Look, 15.5 seconds. He's nearly in race 2 so far ahead of the opposition, is he? And it's going to grow, because now David Fairbrother up into second place. It's been a good charge. He's going to have to go defensive, because now he's got Aurelius Rustica all over him like a rash.
It looks like they're so tentative around this final sector compared to everywhere else in the lap. There must just be a lot more water down there on the circuit, because for the rest of the circuit they look fine, but just as soon as they get to that last sector, they're going nowhere. You can see on the left-hand side there, Fairbrother up 7 positions now into second place. But like you say about Gellings, it's like he's playing Mario Kart, chucking bananas out the back. Everybody that goes near him just ends up rotating it. You can see there the 7 on the left. They're just taking it nice and easy through there. But still, this now is just Fairbrother against everybody else, but that Porsche's looking potent at the moment.
And in the background, Christoph Ulrich has got going again, so he will be a lap down, but has got going again.
That's a
yet
control
another drama.
delete.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it makes you wonder whether it was another, it just wouldn't restart after another spin. Now, Rustica doing a bit what he did at Monza, a gentle start, and then the more confident he becomes in car, in tyre, in circuit, the more he's able to push, and now chases on in pursuit of David Fairbrother up towards the Spitzkehrer hairpin, out of the Parabolica, and turning into the right-hander now, so down through the gears, try and find some grit, try and find the traction. Replay of the start. Now let's have a look and see what Christoph Ulrich did wrong. It was a good getaway by Oliver Freimuth there in the black Lamborghini, diving to the inside line. Rattled up the curve though, just about got away without contact against Mark Patterson. Head up the short straight towards turn 2. Replay of the start from on board in mid-grid with Aurelius Rustica in the Porsche. So this from 7th, turning his way through turn 1. You can see the slippery curb on one side, puddles, bit of standing water on the outside. Relatively little spray being thrown up. but he had already lost Christoph Ulrich by this stage at the Parabolica, and then 3 wide on the very inside. Freimuth, Fairbrother got ahead of him, and bang, a little bit of a rub between the Mark Patterson Audi and Oliver Freimuth's Lamborghini on the inside.
This will be the spin then for the number 7, just coming out of the left, just lights up the rears. And he's very lucky not to get collected there by the other KTM. That was incredibly close. We didn't see that originally. And I believe, is this the other moment as well? Again, just lighting up the rears. And this is what we were talking about just at the top of the broadcast there, wasn't it? These cars do move around mid-corner. If you're modulating the brakes or the throttle and just upset that momentum of the car, the inertia of it, you'll very quickly spin it around. And even there, it was just a quick blip of the throttle as Rustiker has now got up into 2nd place. Fairbrother dropping down. You could just see the wheel just wanted to go completely left.
Fairbrother's had a moment, I fear, somewhere, because he's falling way back into 5th place. So we'll piece this all together. So yes, Aurelius Rustiker now up into 2nd spot. And this is how in replay. So David Fairbrother in the green Lamborghini comes in way too deep, and there was no way he was going to make the corner. But in his defense, he didn't fight it. He let the car run off, let it run wide rather than suddenly try and turn and risk a spin. So he let the car flow, lose his places, drops behind Freimuth, but he's able to guide it back onto the road and therefore lives to fight another day.
Yes, indeed. He could have very easily tried to fight that, like you say, chucked it sideways, and then, let's face it, it wouldn't have gone through the gravel. It's a good advert for Lamborghini's upcoming Paris-Dakar programme, though, by the look of it, wasn't it? But Rustiker has been fantastic in this race, and I must just touch on as well, when we look back at the highlights there, Fairbrother, as they almost went 4 wide into the hairpin, he just shot through the middle of all of them and just said, thank you very much, and absolutely cleared off into the distance. Now, that's the 2 KTMs together a little bit further back. That's the number 23 and 24 machine. Rosenberger there just following the... Well, it was actually at the start of the lap. He was behind Fairbrother, but that's Atzberger just in front of him now, isn't it? As they then follow on with Fairbrother just ahead. And you can see none of them still going quite for that apex on the inside, just avoiding the curb through the slow left. That's the real sort of pinch point for these cars, because when you're going around a pretty quick corner already, you've got the aero assistance, as mentioned, not as much of it, but it's the start-stop stuff. Spinning up those rears, getting out of a slow corner is the really treacherous part of a lap here.
The other interesting thing is that, of course, the road is now neither fish nor fowl. It's not wet, it's not dry. It's lulling the drivers into that. This is why we're having the spins. They're trying that little bit harder and then suddenly realising there isn't as much grip as they thought. It's certainly not as wet as it was at the start of the day for one of the qualifying sessions, for example, but it is certainly not bone dry. And here you've got the Lamborghini versus the KTM. The KTM's nice lightweight cars, but again, they haven't got that much weight sticking them to the ground. And you saw Sedi Sarmini and Christoph Ulrich having a rotation up over the timing line. Peter Gerling's leading there by 18 seconds. Second is Aurelius Rustiker in the Porsche, who's also had a good start to the race, gaining 5 spots. Mark Patterson third, doing a very good job actually, Mark Patterson, in his defence, because he's worked his way up the order. As there, under attack is David Fairbrother, losing out because past him goes Rupert Atzberger. KTM goes through. Intriguing, isn't it, the way that the Lamborghini went so well early on. Now it's sliding back down the order as other drivers, yes, I know David had his off, but other drivers seemingly getting more confident and being able to push, like, and that's the third KTM rotation, and this time it finds something to hit. So round goes Rupert Atzberger, sharing the car with Peter Cox, and Atzberger will rejoin, finds a gear, rally crosses his way back onto the circuit, but again, just a bit too much leaden right foot, and around it goes like a top.
Yeah, it's that false sense of security that you can put your foot down and get on with it. We've seen a number of drivers as well. There's a humongous wet patch on the way into the hairpin, and they're all just hanging over to what is their right-hand side of the road just to maybe cool the tyres a little bit, just to try and keep those wet tyres working as they should. But it's just so easy to step on it. Last time round we had Rustiker as well, the first driver to dip under the 2:03 mark. He did a 2:02.796, fastest lap of the race. We've also had the best VMAX speed set on the last lap by Freimuth as well in the Lamborghini, so it's definitely got the top end across the other cars, but just not able to make it work over the full lap. But Rustiker in that Porsche doing a great job as, there's been even more issues now.
And he's that number 16 of Sedi Sarmini once more, that was second early on. The front, it looks worse because that's how you get out of the car. You open the front of it.
It looks very dramatic.
It does, like it had a huge off. It might not be quite so bad, but yeah, safety car is being deployed. Sedi Sarmini, I fear, is the driver involved, so we'll piece all that together again in a moment, and that takes you to the end of 10 minutes. It might have been small on numbers to begin with, but it's been a dramatic, thanks to the weather conditions, conditions, first 10 minutes or so. Safety car deployed then, and that is so that KTM can be removed, because the last thing you need is anybody else going out wide and collecting it. And that is really bad news for Peter Gerlings. He built up a 20-second advantage, and it is about to disappear. There is the safety car. That will be deployed any moment, and they'll all bunch up. And that, as I say, is really bad news, especially given that Gerlings has an extra 10 seconds in the pits. Rustica to Vergas has 5 seconds. Patterson to Fjordbach, no extra time. So suddenly the third-placed Audi is in the pound seats.
Yes, he is indeed. And I think the only person out there, other than Gerlings' teammate, that wouldn't have wanted to see that safety car was Gerlings, because everybody else, yeah, there was a few seconds between them, but they're all still within a fight of each other. But yeah, they'll be absolutely gutted with that. It was such an impressive start by him as well. But unfortunately, all of that now has come to nothing. But I'll tell you what, though, David, it's really it's testing our detective work as this race already, isn't it? So many things just very quickly happening. But there you can see Framer on the left-hand side, leader in the AM class, able to be determined by the number boards. The Pro-Ams, as you see there on the 81 number board on the side of the Audi, has the black squares above and below it to let you know at least that it's a Pro-Am car, and then the AMs will have the red instead, as opposed to the old way they used to do it, where they had entirely red number boards. But that's just me being a nerd.
I'll just let that hang. There is 81 there. That's the leader, Peter Gerlings, who is going to be decidedly Albert's mother about this, as I say, with that huge advantage disappearing. We haven't yet waved the flag, we ought to, because there's an invoice to go in here, for Stefan Rattel, because he's up into 7th place on the back of the grid. So the governor is doing a good job. Stefan, who doesn't race that often, but enjoys the racing when he can, and it suits him very well, this format, especially when it's not at one of the major SRO events where he's busy looking at other categories. So, for example, although he was racing at Monza, there was also GT3 and GT4 that weekend to slightly distract him. But here he does the first stint, and of course we'll do the second stint in the second race. You do the qualifying and the start for one of the races, and then your co-driver does it for the second. So both of you get a chance to start. Now that partly explains more about Teddy Sarmini, and he has hit something pretty solid. So even though the front of the car is up because that's how the driver gets out, I'm not convinced there's much in front of that anymore.
No, I was going to say the rest of it's in a jigsaw on the apex of turn 2. But to me, I'm going to start the detective work early on this one. It looks like he's gone on the way in, maybe lost it on the brakes. The car's just pitched right suddenly, and he's hit the wall along the inside on the way in. Now we're going to have a quick look back at what happened to Atzberger and see whether I'm correct, I suppose.
Well, there's Atzberger's dramas, there's Sarmini's dramas. So this is the spinning Rupert Atzberger. This was at the Parabolica. Onto the throttle, loops the back, around he goes, and he does find the wall, bounces off it, and carries on. So he quickly hooked a gear and got on with it. This is from the external view. Didn't actually get onto the curb, did he? That was purely the dampness offline that caught him out. And Marshall quick with a yellow flag. Right, Teddy Sarmini's story up at turn 2. Looks like it just got away under braking, and it's broken the suspension. I'm not sure that car's going to be out for race 2. That was a big hit, wasn't it? Yeah,
that was a very, very big hit. Horrible noise as well when it just clattered the wall there. Luckily, though, we saw him. He's out and he's all right. He's managed to walk away from the car, so that's the main thing. Cars can be replaced.
Yeah, the frustration, of course, in all of this for Christoph Ulrich is that although they've all bunched up, he's still not got his lap back because he lost that early on. He was never able to unlap himself. So despite the fact that he'll be with everybody else, he is still a lap down. And therefore meaning that the hard yards are going to have to come from the quick Christoph Lentz in the second stint. But it might be that if others throw themselves at the scenery or have dramas, they can pick up places. But I don't think it's going to be an easy drive. So safety car stays out. Now, what also is going to be worth looking at is whether the pit window is delayed if the safety car is still on track.
Yeah, it's a good point, because then if there are the quicker drivers to get in for the second stint, if they're slightly quicker than the first drivers that we're going to see, that effect that pace difference will have will be shortened in time as well. So if anybody needs to do any catching, like we saw with Gerlings at the beginning there, he was just off into the distance. If he can do that and build enough of a gap so that the 10-second extra, obviously in the pits, is is going to cause any issues, then.
Right, we've seen then the dramas for Sedi Sarmini. Stefan Rossina would have taken over that car. He's not going to get a drive, but the consolation is a chat to Gemma Scott.
Stefan, obviously very disappointing to see the car go off like that. Have you had any communication with Sedi? Do you know what happened?
Yeah, finally we know that he's fine. No one really knows now what happened because it was on a straight. So yeah, good thing is he's fine, but unfortunately for us we are not able to score any points this race, and hopefully we're gonna make the car for the next race.
It looks like there's quite a lot of work to be done. Do you think it's possible to get that turned around?
I think it's 50-50, it's not sure yet. So we'll need to now inspect the car, but it might well be that we will not do the race too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Stefan Rossina then possibly will be out in race 2, and we'll try and have another look. You see, it just goes under braking. Whether that was a failure or whether, because it went so suddenly, and it's not a part of the circuit that had suddenly got wetter or greasier, it does make you wonder whether it was a mechanical issue.
Yeah, it didn't look like he clipped the grass or anything either.
No.
You know, it didn't unload everything from that left rear, because that's usually the thing. You know, if these drivers really do run it out wide and try and use all of the road, even in the wet, you often take a wider line, don't you?
Yeah, but that was the line. You know, everybody else is using it, so it's a bit odd, that one. Anyway, we are still behind the safety car. This is race 3 within the Fanatec Gt2 European Series. Stefan Rattel is the man that you are on board with as he awaits for the incident to be cleared and for the circuit to go green once more. The pit window has been delayed because we are imminent to get into that, really only a lap or so away, and we're still under safety car conditions. So Peter Daly, the race director for this, as he is for British GT, says we'll delay the window. That therefore nudges it back a little bit, and it also means, of course, that, and Chaz was making the point a moment ago, those quick drivers in the second stint have got a shorter stint, relatively speaking, in which to work their magic. So those drivers that have to overcome the extra time penalties in the pits for being in the top 3 in the previous round are really up against it.
Yeah, and especially having to push more as well. If they know that they've got a push to, well, make in the final race, the final stint, then in these conditions, that is not what you want. You know, if it was in the dry, all fine, you know, just go out, all guns blazing. But here, you really don't know what to expect. We can see that the circuit is drying, especially in comparison to what we had earlier on this morning. But now, there's still drivers with windscreen wipers on. I'm not sure whether that's a direct reflection of any drizzle or anything like that, but especially in this stadium section here, there seems to be a dry line forming, but then the final few corners, they just don't seem to have the confidence they do everywhere else around the lap.
No, indeed. It's 4.5 kilometres long, the Hockenheim, the new iteration of the Hockenheimring. I say new, relatively new, compared to the old circuit that took you out into the trees and back, which is a fabulous old circuit. But the modern one does give good racing with the tight hairpins and the sort of start-stop nature of some of those stadiums. Over the timing line they go. Peter Gellings leads the way then. And as we've been saying, the pit window has been delayed. So it is Gellings from Rustica, and what was 20 seconds between the two is now just a matter of lengths. Mark Patterson, third, and really looking good now because of the lack of extra penalties in the pits and a quick co-driver in Anders Fjordbach for a race win. That is a car that really has benefited hugely from this situation.
Yeah, definitely. Always going to be one to watch now from the very moment that we get back to green flag racing. Here we are on board with the wonderful sounding and wonderful looking Lamborghini. This is the Super Trofeo GT2 that Fairbrother is at the wheel of at the moment. And a wonderful 5.2 litre V10 powering this thing around. A very distinct noise between this and the Audi. Obviously very, almost identical engines, let's face it. Really good sounding and looking car. But early on, amazing progress. But like you said, David, he suddenly threw the anchors out.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had that off and then seemed to be losing pace, or others were getting more confident. But again, you see, Jordan Witt, quick driver, race winner in a McLaren in British GT, for example, last year. Because of the safety car, that car's still in the mix. Everybody is in the mix at the moment. Now, okay, it's going to look a bit different when you factor in an extra 10 seconds for a couple of cars for those pit stops. 7 for 2, 5 seconds extra for 2. Top 3 from the classes in the previous race. But if you don't have the extra compensation time, success time in the pits, you're in the mix. And Mark Patterson is looking very good, and that does not look good. That's a rather dog-eared KTM, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. He's going to be going back with his tail between his legs for sure on that one. I'm actually quite surprised at how beautiful they've managed to make the KTM Crossbow, to be fair. It's always a car that's divided opinion on its visual aspects, let's say, but the GT2 car looks absolutely stunning.
Go along with that, the closed car, better than the open-top car. Go back to the early days of the KTM Crossbow. The open-top one was a little bit quirky, but I think the closed one looks really good.
Yeah, definitely. And an interesting point as well, I'm talking about the visual aspects of these cars. Obviously, the very aggressive-looking Audi R8 GT2. When you see the pace car, and then you see the GT2 variant right behind, you see the massive difference between the pair of them. Obviously, a lot wider, boxier wheel arches, splitters, canards, huge wing. They've even got the fin down the back, the massive, huge roof scoop as well on them. They are, for people like me who love a bit of aero and love a bit of, let's just say, sharp bodywork, they are an absolute dream and proper race cars to look at, aren't they?
It's one of the many joys of GT racing. Different shapes and sizes, different sounds that they make as well. And again, the balance of performance has to kick in here, of course, but you've got so many different elements, whether it's turbo, normally aspirated, a heavy car, a light car, a small engine, a big engine, you know, you name it. Now, I suspect as well we're going to have in this pit window people changing tyres, are we not? Because now you can see they're having to head for the damper parts of the road, and it's damp, not wet, that we can describe it as now. So a roll of the dice in the pits to go onto slicks could be an absolutely inspired choice, given that the second stint is going to be a short, sharp dash to the flag. We've still not yet had the pit window open, therefore nobody has made a pit stop. We've got 28 minutes and counting of the race to go. It's going to be a really dramatic end to this, depending on when we can go racing. And there, look, the Pirelli slicks are ready, the teams are set, and the pit stops are going to be absolutely crucial now, because in most cases, just about every case, you're going to get the higher graded driver in. Wrong to call them the pro, let's say the more experienced. Therefore, the driver who is better versed at coping with the slicks, getting them up to temperature on a still damp road.
Yeah, we're going to see these guys absolutely on it from the get-go. As soon as they get out of that pit box, they are going to be flying, and obviously on a drying track as well, it's only going to get better and better for them. So I'm really intrigued to see who will get the top of this. Still have to factor in the extra time for some of these drivers, but whether that'll affect them come the end, I suppose there's only one way to find out.
Indeed so. Oliver Frymont you're looking at, massively experienced driver Oliver Frymont, who goes back to the one-mate Renault Championships. He had a brief spell in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and the safety car heading down towards us. The lights go out then, so it'll be in this time. Lights out, safety car will be in. And if you're really on your toes, you'll follow it in and get the pit stop ready and done. And it could be that everybody comes in. You could have the whole field pouring in. The really shrewd teams will be on their toes. So down through the stadium comes the safety car, and it is Peter Gerlings then who came out of the 24-hour series, the Creventic series, that leads the pack. He slows right down, so it looks like he's going to go and try and do at least one more racing lap. Aurelius Rustica behind him in the Porsche, then the third-placed blue and white Audi, then in the hands of Mark Patterson. And as they come then now through the Sudkurve, the first five at least stay out. The pit window is open. So the really smart teams might roll the dice, get them out of the traffic. I haven't yet seen anybody come into the pit lane as the cars come over the timing line then. So Gerlings leads, Rustica second. And they're going through. Third is Patterson, fourth is Frymont, fifth is Fairbrother, sixth Rosenberger, seventh is Rattel. The recovering Rupert Axberger is eighth behind him, and you can see there, look, having a go, Chris Rosenberger up the inside there of the green Lamborghini up towards turn two. The KTM brakes as late as it dares, and Rosenberger tries to go through. He's got the tighter line for turn two. He's going to be on the outside for turn three, but he has got the job done.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Nice and tidy. They seemed really confident when they got on the brakes, but then when they got to the apex, it was sort of like after you to see who wanted to try the wet part of the circuit first. But it had obviously dried out a lot more than they'd expected there, and the KTM disappears off down the road. But you can see them still hanging over slightly to the right. There is a little bit more water on the right-hand side of the circuit. Oh, big hit though on the Lambo. Really late on the brakes from Fairbrother. And the very sort of low-slung, pointy front end of that Lamborghini lifts the KTM off the ground. I'm intrigued to see what damage there is on the KTM, but there's a big old whack on the front of the Lamborghini.
And the stewards will have a look at that, no doubt. So David Fairbrother either was caught out by the braking of the KTM or braked far too late, depending on who you're going to talk to post-race. Well, he survives it, and the Lamborghini, which has been off the road already this weekend, it's had a couple of drive shaft failures as well, takes another hit. but carries on almost undaunted. It's like swatting a fly, isn't it? He just dispenses with the KTM, battles on regardless. Now here, third and fourth have got themselves together. Mark Patterson, look, dropping away from Aurelius Rustica into the clutches of Oliver Frymut. They almost came to blows on the opening lap when Frymut was a bit toey, but he's on the back now of the Audi, and Rattel, fifth, he's also catching up, so he's benefited out of all of that. He's just gained another 2 places. So it's a race full of drama, that is for sure. Pit window is open, and now we should expect, should we not, to have people diving in. I think Patterson's coming for the pit lane. Yes, he is.
Yeah. That was very hesitant for a moment there, wasn't it? It almost looked like he just couldn't decide, but yeah, he does jump in and gets away from that battle, because well, we've got race leader in as well, and Rustica.
Yeah.
It's probably a really good call to get out of that battle, though, because the Lamborghini behind him there, if they would have battled for the following lap, then that would have really thrown up any sort of order between the two of them, and they could have just held each other up.
Now this is going to be the interesting part, not just the driver change, we know about that, but what are they doing for tyres? Look, the Porsche in the background goes up, and I'm expecting teams, as there comes Mark Patterson, I'm expecting slicks to be offered up. Rattel is in to give way to Luca Piri. But those wets surely aren't going to last. They're going to have to think about a tyre stop, and the driver change is the first element, but surely tyre changes are going to have to happen. You can see the mechanics having a look at the state of the tyres. If they can save the time and just let the cars go, then fair enough.
Yeah.
Having said that, the gun driver now is the driver most likely to get the slicks to work on a damp road. They're also, with their experience, the driver most likely to be able to eke out the life in a well-used set of wets.
Yeah, definitely. Either way, they can get it going. Interesting that they still use the actual shifter from the original car there as well, as we have
a tyre change for the KTM up the road.
Indeed. Now, interestingly, the tarmac there is still wet in the pit lane, so they may have to just rely on what the driver says for that, and the Porsche goes out. Didn't look to me like they changed tyres on that.
No,
it did go up in the air, but I don't think they put any on it.
Right, so the black KTM is going on to slicks. Away goes Bert Longchamp. Now remember, that car's lost its lead. Away goes Fjordbach. So that car has lost its lead because of the longer pit stop. So that's going to put, of those that have stopped, Vergers, look, ahead of then Bert Longchamp, and then it's going to be Anders Fjordbach.
Yeah, they've not changed the tyres. There's no tyre writing on those. There's no yellow tyre writing, so that is definitely still on those wets. So Vergers trying everything he can then. Let's see how he can eke out that life that you mentioned, David.
So that safety car period will have helped because they've run at a slower pace.
Yeah.
So they've not been abusing them as much. And now Michael Vergers is going to be having a look everywhere to try and keep that car on a damp part of the road and eke out the life. Now there in the background is Bert Longchamp. Look, if he goes off the road there, it'll be wetter. That's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's kind of negative track limit abuse, but he's cooling the tyres. There is Bert Longchamp second. And this is Anders Fjordbach, who is in third place. Now, in terms of pure pace, you'd anticipate him to get up with Longchamp. However, that car lost time before the stops, and Fjordbach is sliding it around as the tyres lose their edge. It's going to be about tyre preservation, this now.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be who can manage it the best while trying to keep a bit of pace in there as well. They really have to be careful about the balance. And you can see here now, Fjordbach going down the inside on the way into corner, way off the circuit, through the left-hander, picks up a bit of the dampness on the exit, and then manages to get a good launch out of there. Still hesitant on the apex for the next right-hander as well, though. Like I've said, this is a balancing act now in a very, very pure form.
Now, we're told, thanks Gemma, that this is on slicks. Number 33, Anders Fjordbach, is on slicks. That tallies, doesn't it? Because you can see the writing on the side of the tyres, the new tyres, and it also accounts for why the car lost time in the pits, because it didn't have any extra success time, and is also looking a bit lively right now. So Fjordbach slicks versus Vergers on wets. Enjoy.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Who's your money on, basically? Fantastic stuff. So they've both got different parts of the circuit they can benefit from now. Of course, this number 33 Audi, he can use the dry line. He can hit the apexes where that line has dried out, or not.
He can hit the wall if he's not careful.
Yeah, I was going to say. But obviously, there's still wet parts of the circuit out there for the other guys to try and just keep the tyres nice and cool, keep them at a decent operating temperature. However, will that change for them? Because it's only going to get drier.
Now, the gap between Vergers and Fjordbach is the one to keep an eye on, and at the end of this next lap, which is the first proper flying lap, we'll get an idea of pace. It'll take a lap or two for those slicks to start to get temperature, to get pressure, but then they'll start to work.
Yeah, it's not even 13 degrees air temperature there, and apparently the track temperature is about 24, so it's not really a hot track for them at the moment. So like you say, he's going to have to just put a few laps in just to get used to it. And to be honest, he's got to just get used to where the wet parts of the track are and where the dry parts are. He's gone a little bit deep into the hairpin again, but he's going to turn it in nice and tight, get a good launch out of there as well. So it's going to be certainly focusing from where he's sat as well. It's not just exciting for us up here.
But so it will be for Vergers and for Langevin, because they now have got to constantly feel the car, feel the wear. The grip will be changing all the time as the road is changing. The road is drying, the tyres are going off, so it's a real knife edge for them as well. That's Oliver Freimuth into the pit lane, so he briefly inherited the lead. Now he's the one soloist in this, so he will stay behind the wheel. This is Vergers then, who is effectively the race leader, and he will come up towards the end of the lap, still being chased by Bert Langevin, and then in third place it will become Anders Fjordbach, the third of the stoppers. So Vergers, massively experienced driver, whether it's from his time in Formula Ford in the UK and his great success, whether it's been as a class champion in the Le Mans series. He comes over the timing line. Where is there a bit of damp? Well, there's barely any on the pit straight.
Yeah, the right-hand side really doesn't have much to offer there. And the thing is, the only damp bit he could find there was on the braking zone on the way in, and you don't want to push your luck too much on there because, let's face it, that's the bit where you're slowing down. It's not the bit where you're trying to put your foot down. Let's have a look how he gets into the right-hander. No, he's not actually done too badly there. The Lamborghini comes back out then, the number 28 machine.
Now, the race director has allowed the teams to change. You're not obliged to stay on your wets. You can make a tyre stop if you want, but of course, this is the problem, that you might lose too much time.
Right then. So Freimuth goes back out then, as you said, David, the only solo artist in the race. He's got the original race leader in front of him then, Bert Langevin, in the 81 Audi. Oh, something maybe fell off the Lambo there by the look of it. It was a bit ropey, let's say, at the front left of that thing after the contact early on. There's a little bit, by the look of it, a little knock on the rear as well, because the exhausts aren't quite in the centre. They're slightly bent out of shape, but that's not really the on the top of the priority list for Freimuth at the moment. A little bit of a slide from the rear there on the brakes as he gets it in, but we can see that he's using that dry line. Bit of dampness on the right-hand side there as he comes out of the first of the two stadium sections. Certainly looks potent on track at the minute, but he's actually using a lot of the dampness there on the right-hand side as well. So you can see how hesitant he's being when he chucks it in, maybe crossed the dry line a bit there. This is not going to be a comfortable few laps for him, is it?
Now, with the race director having authorised tyre changes just a few moments ago, now the question is about those that have already changed. You could argue that that was at their suggestion, their risk in a sense, but it hadn't been authorised at that stage by the race director. So it could well be that there are penalties coming for the likes of Fjordbach for changing tyres before authorised. Now, you might think that's a strange regulation, because normally it's up to you to roll the dice and do what you want on tyres. However, with this being, if you like, a gentleman drivers series, it's a little bit different. So there is the charging Fjordbach, who has now done the fastest lap of the race, and he's very nearly 3 seconds quicker than Michael Vergers, but it might actually be to no effect, because if he's pitted too early, or rather changed the tyres too early, I should say, that could come back to bite them. We're checking with the officials, but Fjordbach may not, I'm afraid, survive all of this.
Yeah, it's always hanging in the balance, isn't it, as is the way with motorsport. But just as a demonstration of the difference of pace, here's the hit earlier, by the way. Oh, it's a big old hit for the back of that KTM. I mean, the Lamborghini, the front end of that car really held up strong, but the KTM came so far off the ground, dug the splitter into the floor as well. Here we go on board. You can see he's on the brakes, and it's just got nothing.
Just can't do anything, can he?
Yeah, it seems like it's braking fine, but the KTM just had so much more potency. And to be fair, I think they're both quite lucky to have carried on after that, because it could have easily put it over. It could have bounced and gone over. You never know, really.
Now, that was the Jordan Witt, David Fairbrother Lamborghini that was the aggressor. Jordan Witt at the wheel of it. David Fairbrother is then out of the car, and he can explain all with Gemma.
Dave, we've just seen a replay of your accident. It looked a pretty big moment, actually. What happened?
Yeah, well, obviously once the safety car goes in, everybody's sort of jockeying for positions, and the Lambos don't turn as well as the KTMs. The KTMs are very nimble and they turn really quickly. So it got me on the run down to turn 2. I went through turn 2, turn 3, and I thought, right, I'll just get behind him. And my braking point into turn
into the hairpin is something like 180 to 200, 280 metres. We brake, I braked, but he braked at 250. I knew I had to hit him square or I'd taken the corner out of the car, so I just hit him. And the next thing, his engine's staring me in the face.
A big moment, but glad you're okay. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
I've never heard a racing driver actually admit to hitting him square. I mean, I see totally the rationale from David Fairbrother, but to hear a driver say I had to line him up, I had to hit him square to reduce the amount of damage on both, that's an interview to replay and play again.
Yeah, that lovely honesty on
absolutely.
that.
David, a career in the British Touring Car Championship beckons, I reckon. Right, up towards the Spitzkehrer. There is the charging Fjordbach. He's got ahead, as you've seen, of Bert Langin. So there is the leading Porsche. But race control are looking at that car for changing tyres before it was authorised by the race director.
Well, it could be a race that's decided afterwards. The Porsche still using all of the road, running very wide through the left kink here. But look at the confidence the 33 Audi has out of there. Amazing.
Yeah. Pressing on, and the gap's coming down and down and down all the time with 13 minutes to go. In terms of pure pace, Fjordbach is on, isn't he? I mean, you can see the way he's absolutely reeling in Vergers, whose last lap was a 56.4, and Fjordbach's last lap was a 49.4. So this is obscene, the amount of extra pace that car's got, and it's purely down to having the right boots on. And look at this for the race lead. Easy peasy, up the inside goes Anders Fjordbach, and there's just nothing that Vergers can do.
No, it's painful on Vergers' part because he's trying to get the most out of those tyres, the most out of that car, and he just has to watch the Audi go flying down the inside. And I was just going to touch on before the difference in pace. These guys, when they did the fastest lap of the race earlier on, it was a 2:03.7 in the wet, and now they're doing 1:49. So that just shows you how different it is. It's not like it's just 4 or 5 seconds, it's more like 20.
Yeah. So this car, the leading car, is under investigation for a pit stop infringement. You can see it going up on its jacks. There, tyres off, tyres go on. So it's had a tyre change, and so also, look, number 7 KTM. That's the car that Christoph Lenz has taken over from Christoph Ulrich, but that also is being looked at because those tyre changes not authorised by the race director. There is a tyre change timed stop. It's 48 seconds, but that had to be a separate one, not into that pit stop. So that's why it's an infringement, and that is the easiest pass Anders Fjordbach will do. Slicks against wets on a virtually bone dry road.
Indeed, and one with that much camber as well to help you really chuck it in and get the most grip out of it. It would have been like the outside of a bowl for that Porsche there. It just worried about going over the edge and into the gravel. He had to be very tentative. I was just wondering there about the pit stops. Obviously, you know this better than I do, David, but is there anything stopping them doing the tyre change while the driver change is still being done? Because he was actually still sorting the driver out while they were changing those tyres there.
In GT3, no. In GT2, yes, because a tyre change from wets to slicks or slicks to wets has to be authorised by the race director, and that's the thing, that it
so
hadn't
it still
been
boils
done.
Down to the same point,
so, the call had not been given, so that should have been purely the driver change stop. You could argue the team was clever to do the tyre change, but unfortunately that contravenes a regulation, and that's what's being looked at. So tyre changes have now been authorised, and therefore people can come in. Now, if this car were to get a penalty, it could be a pure time penalty post-race. So it's in Fjordbach's best interest now just to go hell for leather and try and win by the biggest possible margin. If, for example, their Vergers or their Langin were to come in now and do a tyre change stop, then they would lose so much time that they might be even further back, so that a penalty to Fjordbach would still keep him in the lead, if you're following all of this.
Yeah, it wouldn't really be a net gain. Even, I mean, to be fair, how much time would they gain on the dry tyres? You know, would they be able to get any of that back in the first place? You've got to weigh it up against what the pace of the other cars is as well. You can't just say, oh, well, you know, we'll be 5 seconds quicker a lap, but, you know, are the other cars that much quicker as well?
They'd certainly be quicker than they are now. Because,
for sure.
So the gap that we'll have at the end of the race, if they stay out, it'll be a bigger one than if they had got slick tyre pace, but then you lose 48 seconds minimum to go onto the slick tyres. So really, they just got to brave it out. So it's really going to be Vergers versus Langin plus Fjordbach versus the stewards.
Yeah, and you just saw there Langin on the way into the hairpin, still going for that damp patch on the inside, just managing it as much as he can. Very menacing car to have chasing you is that Audi R8. certainly bearing down on him quite quickly. We've got notification coming in from cars 33 and 28. No investigation necessary, apparently.
That was turn 1, wasn't it? When
Yes.
Freiburg got up the curb, and then was that? Sorry,
the hairpin
on the first lap. They had a near miss at turn 1. Then there was that rub on the opening lap, but it was just one of those things. So yeah, Greg Masters, who is the chairman of the stewards, former racer himself in one make and classic saloons. Peter Daly, the race director, racer in Formula Ford 1600s himself. So they know what they're talking about, the officials. And here, look, Vergers with the car sliding all over the road is under huge pressure from the car that led the first stint, the Audi, in the hands of Bert Langin, who is all over him like a rash, isn't he?
Yeah, it's like he's got the fast food trays under the back end like we used to have in our front-wheel drive hatchbacks, trying to make him drift around the McDonald's car park. Honestly, it's all over the shop on the brakes, and even when he's putting the power down, the Audi just looks so much more planted, and it's a real shame for that number 5 Porsche, because earlier on in the race, it looked so potent. He was absolutely on a mission. But look at this now, Langin down the inside, nice and convincing into turn 1. You can see the Porsche dancing on the brakes, tries to get a cutback, doesn't quite work at turn 1 at Hockenheim, but now he's on the damp part of the track slightly. On the right-hand side, is he going to try and outbrake him? I tell you what, he's still fighting it, though.
Absolutely.
A little bit later on the brakes.
Go on, Verge, up the inside. He's done it. Yep, brakes late, gets the place back. But the drive the Audi has is just better than the Porsche, which, again, is sliding all over the road. And Bert Langin goes round the outside, approaching the Parabolica, and through he goes, up in a second place. Now, if Michael Vergers is really brave, under braking now for the Spitzkehrer hairpin, he might be able to fight back. Let's see. He's on the wets. He's got a dampish part of the road. Wide in, he's tight out. But that car has just got no traction relative to the Audi. And Langin stays ahead and look, drives off the corner so much better.
Just disappears up the road. He got a really good initial launch out of that, Vergers, but as soon as that Audi just shifts up a gear, it just digs in and off it goes. We're still looking, look at that, it's completely sideways around the right.
It's great to watch, isn't it?
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, we were talking about drifting on the way down here. I might get back into it. Flipping out. Vergers certainly trying to, but just when it matters most, look, it's just floating around the corner. It's just not as pointy as that Audi, is it?
And he's absolutely praying that at some point that he shows his right foot to the pedal, there'll be some grip, but he'll actually come out of the corner where he wants to be, because every corner seems to be a step into the unknown, because the tyres are absolutely shot. And around goes...
Is that the Lamborghini? That's the Jordan Witt Lambo.
It is. So Jordan Witt has had a drama just to add to the woes of the weekend in that car. And he's taken a KTM with him, because most incidents involve a KTM. And look, broken toe link at the back, number 17 KTM. That is Klaus Angerhofer. So let's have a look at that in a moment, if we can. Here you go. And boom, up the inside. I'm not entirely sure. Jordan Witt was fully alongside, and then he connects him again as he goes past that secondary contact. So that's another KTM in the wars.
Yeah, it's like, you hit my right rear, I'll take yours as well. Look,
he's not fully alongside, is he?
No, and then ready?
There's the second one, and that turns Jordan around.
I'll tell you what, holding onto a wheel that shape as well when you get a sudden hit like that is not a comfortable experience. And then he just waits to try and get it going again. But yeah, a bit of a late lunge down the inside, but we've seen the difference in traction between those cars, haven't we?
We have indeed, as the Porsche, still struggling for traction, is about to get mugged again here. Tell you what, the KTM spares department's going to be busy, because most of those cars have had problems and had some damage. Right, is that Peter Cox who has managed to claw back so much time? It is. So that number 23, now the massively experienced Peter Cox, from GTs, from touring cars, from single-seaters, you name it. Peter recovering, remember, after that car had a spin earlier on into the wall when Rupert Atzberger lost it coming out of the Parabolica. So Peter Cox for third place, that's on.
It's crazy to be thinking about commentating on Peter Cox after watching him in the BTCC in the 90s in a Honda Accord. Bit of a different car now in the KTM Crossbow GT2, staring at the back of the very wonderful Porsche, but again, it just comes down to that car having no traction whatsoever. It looks like they're actually dragging the 17 KTM back to the pits, which is a fair old effort, but look, just the wheel, he's just floating it through the corner, isn't he? It's just tiny, precise movements. KTM low-slung machine right behind.
I would slightly take issue that they're not precise. I think for Michael Vergers, he is having to really fight that car, because he does not know what it's going to do. He's being oh so gentle with it, as he has to be, but he just does not have that grip that others around him have. I mean, that KTM is another one on an absolute mission, but the Porsche clearly is struggling, and it's about to get mugged out wide. Slides Vergers, and by the time he's managed to gather it all up and get back onto the racetrack, Peter Cox has gone.
it's almost NASCAR style. Like the bodywork doesn't look like it's lined up with the underside of the car properly. It's just completely sideways, floating everywhere it goes. And he's going to be absolutely gutted. There you go. You can see Peter Cox flashing the light saying, I'm coming for you. And he's going after Longchamp.
Absolutely. And with 5 minutes on the clock, plus this Damocletian investigation for Fjordbach, it could be a very crucial battle.
Yeah, it could be a race win.
Absolutely
you never
right.
know.
Absolutely right.
That's the thing everyone always says in motorsport. You do not give up. And Peter Cox is going to be thinking about that right now. He's going to push, push, push as far as he can. And Vergas still might get a good result out of this. I mean, 4th place isn't bad by anybody's books. But let's face it, it could be a podium. So why not keep on going?
So down he comes to the Spitzkehrer. 4.5 minutes are on the clock. And it's, of course, the flag out the first time the leader crosses the line once the 50 minutes are up. And so right now, just to make the point, Anders Fjordbach had to catch everybody, or sorry, catch the leading trio. He's got past them. And last time around, he was over 40 seconds to the good, 4-0. So that shows you the difference between slicks and wets. Now, I don't know if there is going to be a penalty, and it's not for me to decide what the penalty would be were there to be one, as this is Longchamp versus Cox. But just to throw into the melting pot, the minimum time that you have to be in the pits for the regulation tyre change when the race director allows slicks to wets, wets to slicks, is 48 seconds. He's on target to be 48 seconds clear at the end of the race, which might not be a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. He could actually, even if he does get a penalty, he might end up surviving it. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Really good stuff from Peter Cox. A wider entry into the second to last. Down the inside. Thank you very much. Puts the Audi out onto the wetter part of the circuit.
That's on slicks as well, is it not?
Disappears. I believe it is, yeah. Really good pace at the final corner there. We'll tell here as he comes through the first corner. Has it got tyre writing on it? Oh,
I think it has. Pretty sure it has. And that interests me because that's only made the one pit stop. So again, that possibly is one that would be looked at from the pit window because it's got the pace.
But I think they came in a lap after, didn't they? I think they might have been the lap after everyone else went in because there was two cars. I believe it was the 28 Lamborghini and potentially that 23 KTM because they were trying to make up the time that they lost earlier on. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm pretty sure it was one of those two that had that moment. There's still a huge damp patch on the way into the hairpin, but they're just not using it now. They know that there's not really an advantage to it. You may as well just take the racing line, go out wide on the way into the hairpin, use as much as you can. We've got orange exhausts glowing on the back of the Audi R8 GT2 machine. Here is your race leader then. Fjordbach crosses the line with just under 2.5 minutes left to go. The Dane absolutely on a mission here. You can just see the confidence in the cars, the difference. It's night and day from the start of the race. They just launch it through turn one. It's a scary corner, to be fair, in the dry. I can't imagine how tentative you'd have to be in the wet because it's a scary old kink there.
Well, we've got 2 minutes on the clock, so there's time for one more lap at the end of this. Anders Fjordbach then on the road leads the way with Mark Patterson. We were saying because of the lack of extra time they needed to spend in the pits that they were going to be a shoe-in for a win. Well, actually, they spent longer because of a tyre change. That is being looked at as an infringement. And so now this car still, look, 51 seconds clear of anybody else. That illustrates how much better slicks are for these conditions. Peter Cox running in second place is lapping in the 148s, whereas everybody else is in the 50s. So definitely on slicks is the KTM. The question is whether that's changed when it should have done. There you have. It's only made the one pit stop. That's still slightly bugs me, that. There you've got the Oliver Freimuth Lamborghini, and he is leading the AM class. Didn't do the Monza races, so a debut in the series and going nicely in the AKF Motorsport car. Oliver Freimuth then hanging on to that class lead and currently 6th overall.
Yeah, and he's got a couple of cars between him and Hans-Joachim Stuck as well. Great to see him still out racing, isn't it, really, yes, in the KTM crossbow. But that was actually the fastest lap of the race last time round as well by Fjordbach, a 1:45.2, so over 3 seconds quicker than Cox. As you said, Cox not quite on the pace with him, but now he's got a bit of clear air. We may see a difference in that. Here is the KTM just having a look down the inside of the Lamborghini into turn one. That's the number 7 machine. Started on the front row of the grid, obviously not the race they wanted after losing that lap, and through then goes the race leader to put a lap on them. Nice and opportunistic. He's not going to lose any time in doing that, says Fjordbach, but this now will be the last lap of the race, David.
It will indeed, yes. Less than a lap time left in the race. That last lap was a 46. The best of the race has been done by Luca Piri on a 1:45. Now, Luca has made another stop. They have gone from the regulation stop, if you like, to an extra pit stop to go onto slick tyres. It's the right call, but of course you lose so much more time, like half a lap. As here, Fjordbach gets up the inside of the KTM, negotiates that under braking, going up towards the Spitzkehrer. So this might be a story that we carry on with later in the day once the stewards have unravelled all the data and seen who did what and when. But it's been a really impressive stint, irrespective of whether the tyres were on at the right time or not, because Fjordbach has just driven the wheels off this thing.
Oh, he's absolutely disappeared up the road. It's been unbelievable. You get these drivers that can just respond to things happening in a race. It's almost as if the team have said, right, we're under investigation, open a lap, and he goes, hold my beer, watch this. Absolutely gone. Amazing stuff.
Not cold beer, I should think, in these conditions as well.
I hope so.
Right, so by nearly a minute, he leads from Peter Cox, and Bert Langevin leading, if you like, the wet class in third overall ahead of Michael Vergers. So as they come then into the stadium for, in the case there, you can see of the leader the last time, and actually Jordan Witt backs out of that, lets him go for fear of doing another lap. So that's the top 4 on the lead lap, and only the top 4. Checkered flag at the ready. It's going to be a second victory of the season, provisionally, for Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach on slicks on an ever-drying road, who comes through now to take the checkered flag. Anders Fjordbach wins the 3rd race of the year in the Fanatec Gt2 European Series. And just talk amongst yourselves for a minute before Peter Cox arrives on the scene. There is the race winner in the background. Jordan Witt taking 5th, Oliver Freimuth, a class winning 6th, Luca Piri 7th. But Cox, Langevin and Vergers are on their way up towards the checkered flag, but a very, very impressive drive by Anders Fjordbach. Let's just park what happened in the pits for a moment, because that's what's being looked at. But in terms of what he did on the track, faultless.
Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, we saw other cars out there on slicks, but he was still a considerable amount quicker than them. Usually the difference is a couple of tenths. Now, I was just about to say, we've seen the 17 KTM go back out. It's actually saying on the timing, it's on an out lap. So it's like that thing's been in the pits, and they've said, oh yeah, that wheel's just off centre, let's just send it back out.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure I understand the logic behind it, but you're right. It has rejoined 6 laps down, and Klaus Angerhofer bringing it to the end. I suppose, at least if you take the checkered flag, you're guaranteed of points.
Yes,
there you've got Peter Cox already through. Bert Langevin now for 3rd, comes over the line. So the gap 1st to 3rd, the gap slicks to wets, 72 seconds.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Really, but it just shows you the difference. And you were talking earlier on about the call to change, and it made all the difference in the end, you know, and it still could make more of a difference afterwards if the Audi gets thrown out.
Yeah, I mean, slicks were the right thing, but the teams that did it without the authorization of the race director, rather than trying to do it as, like, you might call a natural pit stop, that's the undoing. So the stewards will have a look at all of that, but it's going to be a pretty draconian penalty to take that away from Fjordbach, I would have thought now.
Well, there is your race winner then, number 33. Audi R8 LMS GT2. With the Lamborghini just behind. Like you say there, he just let him through at the end and said, I'm not going to do another lap.
Tell you what, if you want an advert for the strength of a Lamborghini, Jordan Witt and David Fairbrother have proved it in this race. And equally, the resilience of KTMs, because although they've been involved in almost every incident I can remember in that race, they keep on going. They're a bit like Rasputin, aren't they? They just won't die, those KTMs. They come back, you know, I can take more, I can take more. Broken suspension, I can take more, I can get to the flag. But
I was going to say, a phrase that sticks in my head from commentators before was Charlie Cox used to say you couldn't kill that thing with a stick. You definitely couldn't.
Exactly.
You couldn't kill them KTMs with a Lamborghini, never mind a stick. That was very resilient, like you say. A shame that they didn't all finish as high as they expect, but I mean, Peter Cox did a good job in that KTM towards the end as well, hopefully. He's, I mean, he'll be hopeful for a win, obviously, after that.
And bear in mind, that was a car that was in the wall as well after its spin. So, yeah. Drama on track, and now Greg Masters, the chief steward, and his team take a big deep breath, get the regulations and the rule book out, and prepare for guests, I suspect, with all these investigations to have a look at. So they're the top 3. We'll get the top 3 in each class, and a very lively race. It might only have had 11 starters, but we've not been short of things to talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that's one of the wonderful surprises of this. I watched the races back after Monza, and you know, a lot of people will see a small grid and go, oh, I'm not watching that. But at the same time, you only need 2 cars to have a good race. I've seen it many a time where we've had grids even smaller than this, and there's still been amazing racing, and this championship still continues to deliver that. This is not a one-off sort of race. You know, the race now has been mega all the way through.
And the more that people see it and talk to their colleagues about what they're racing in, the more this is going to grow. There's
exactly.
around at Silverstone, for example, supporting British GT in June, so it goes to some great venues. And there is Anders Fjord back then, who for the moment is all smiles. You can see the bodywork, how it should be on the KTM, pushed forward to enable Christoph Lenz to wriggle clear of the car. Co-drivers making their way up the pit lane as well there.
Still very amazing to see that, isn't it? The entire cockpit of the car going forward there. Like we said before with the incident with the number 16 machine, it looked very dramatic because the whole roof and front of the car had gone all the way forward, but that was as intended. It's just the bodywork ahead of that wasn't there anymore. But is what is now the norm with a lot of motorsport, the rather subdued paddock at the end, hopefully back to normal before too long. But how long have we been saying that for, right? But so there's your race winner.
Anders Fjord back, a very happy man. 2 out of 3, that is. So a second victory. On goes a mask. And he will prepare himself over his shoulder there. Christoph Lenz out of the KTM. But don't forget, this car under investigation for a possible pit infringement. But we might be able to hear his thoughts on that. Certainly his thoughts about how slicks worked on the road, because Anders Fjordback is with Gemma Scott.
Anders, it was a bit of a brave decision, I think, to go with slicks there. Potentially it could still go against you, but it seemed to go in your favour on track.
Yeah, I think we lost quite a lot of time in the first, so before the safety car. And we knew if we had to pull something off, we had to do something a bit ballsy. We quickly discussed it and said, let's go for the slick tires. And I knew if I could keep it on track for the first couple of laps, we would have a great benefit here at the end. So I'm really proud of the team who took the decision, and we had a pretty good performance here.
And you pulled out a very impressive lead.
Yes, that's also, but I think I'm really proud of the team who took the decision for me and said, we believe in you and you know what to do, and we pulled it off. That's pretty cool.
Well, you showed them they were right. Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But if the team has made a transgression, he might not be so pleased. And you've got to say, you get the feeling, despite the positive words, that he's aware that there might be an issue, because that certainly wasn't a joyous race winner.
Yeah, that wasn't jumping with joy, as the old phrase goes. But you know, he can be happy with his performance on track, as we've said. You know, nothing can take away how unbelievably rapid he was on those slicks. There were other cars out there that still just could not match him one bit. So he has to still be pleased with that. But I suppose that is quite difficult when you know that what it's all come to, the race result, could be taken away from you.
We shall await more news. It could well be that when you join us later on for race 2, the story is a little clearer. Now, there you can see the scenes down in Parc Fermé, and in the midst of all of that is Gemma trying to find the second-placed crew. Rupert Atzberger started. Peter Cox brought the car to the end, also on slicks, and they are with Gemma.
Peter, Rupert, a fantastic charge. Peter, right at the end there, we just saw you picking out a car and making your way past it.
Yeah, I think Rupert already did a good job. Unfortunately, he had an off, and we had some damage to the car, which cost a lot of top speed. But and I think our pressures were a bit not well enough for the beginning. But then when I got going, I got the maximum out of it, and obviously this car was too far away. And then I just consolidated because the car almost fell apart, you know. So, but it held up really nicely, and we have a podium.
Absolutely, and Rupert, of course, your stint starting there much wetter than the race finished.
Peter ist perfekt gefahren. Mehr kann ich dazu nicht sagen.
Thank you very much. Well done, boys.
Thank you.
So a very happy Rupert Atzberger, praising his co-driver's pace. Peter Cox doing a great job in that second stint. Rupert Atzberger, of course, making up for the spin that he had and what looked like a bit of damage, but at high speed, as Peter Cox saying, the front nearly falling apart. So he had that to contend with as well. Sedi Sarmini's KTM, big damage for that. Who else did we lose? There was the Trunkenpolz KTM as well, wasn't there, which suffered some damage. So I think pretty much the only cars that suffered badly with the KTMs. And then you've got the number 9 Lamborghini, which had 2 incidents as well, didn't it? So
yeah, the 17 obviously got collected with that broken toe link. That does look like something that we could potentially see later on, but there is your result.
Provisional result. Anders Fjordback, the winner from the Audi he shares with Mark Patterson, ahead of Rupert Atzberger and Peter Cox. Peter Gellings and Bert Longchamp third, Aurelius Rustica and Michael Vergas fourth, ahead of David Fairbrother and Jordan Witt fifth. A lap down, but fifth, which is a remarkable effort given how many incidents the car seemed to be involved in. Sixth, Oliver Freimuth to win the AM class. Seventh, after a second pit stop, to go on to slicks, Luca Piri and Stefan Rattel, ahead of Chris Rosenberger and Hans Stuck. Christophs, Ulrich and Lentz, 9th. Klaus Angerhofer and Hubert Trunkenpoltz in 10th, and out of the race, and I fear out of race 2 as well after that big impact, Sedi Samini and Stefan Rossina. So Anders Fjordback and Mark Patterson, the provisional winners by 55 seconds, a monster margin. And the drivers then will make their way towards the presentation area. Of course, these days, podiums all look a little bit different. Drivers collect their trophies, stand at the backdrop. So let's look at the best bits of the opening Fanatec GT2 European Series race of the weekend. It began with Oliver Freimuth up the curb and oh so nearly leaning on the Mark Patterson Audi. And then halfway around the lap, the contact did come as they had a little rub, but the steward said it was just one of those things. Drama for number 7, because straight away, Christoph Ulrich had this moment, slithered onto the grass. No damage done, but a lot of time lost. He had another off coming out of turn 2, and there was also a spin for the KTM in the hands of Sedi Samini, and he would have another one, which was a rather more bruising incident a few laps later. Off the road and through the gravel went David Fairbrother, and that wasn't the last that Lamborghini would have in terms of drama either, as the car bounced its way onto the road. Rupert Atzberger's KTM, not wanting to be left out, had a spin, and he found something solid to kiss as well.
Yeah, it certainly was a lively one for a lot of them, wasn't it, really? There wasn't really any cars that didn't have any drama. Safety car came out after the big hit for the number 16, but they'll be hopeful to get that out for later.
Samini off the road at that big impact. Safety car was deployed to remove the car, and on the restart, David Fairbrother into the back of a KTM, inevitably. And this was how it looked from the outside, as being launched into the air was Chris Rosenberger, who got the ride of his life. Pit window was delayed, but when it opened, the number 7 KTM, the number 33 Audi went on to slicks before authorised by the race director. Those stops are being investigated for possibly infringing the regulations, but slicks was certainly the way to go, because as the road got drier, Anders Fjordback was just storming away. Jordan Witt again got involved with the KTM, this time number 17, yet more contact as the two of them went around, and Peter Cox then on slick tyres, charging his way through the order as well to get second on the road behind this car, the Audi, but Anders Fjordback brought home as a comfortable race winner by 55 seconds, only the leading 4 on the lead lap. A great drive for a second win of the season provisionally for Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordback for the high-class racing Audi team. So the drivers currently making their way towards the presentation area, and you can see in the pit lane the other very busy category that we've got here, the Clio Cup Europe, getting set on now a dry circuit. They had the worst of the weather this morning to qualify in. Now they're going to get a dry circuit seemingly for the race, but the cars are going to be released shortly. However, the GT2 drivers, and we've got the top 3 from each of the classes, will be making their way, as I say, towards the presentation area in a minute. Oliver Freimuth ahead of the Stuck and Rosenberg at KTM, and then Lentz and Ulrich's KTM. So the drivers are ready, and the drivers being called forward from Pro-Am. So Peter Gellings and Bert Longchamp, first of all, to make their way to the trophies. Out they come. So the photos to be taken, they're on the 3rd step. Bert Longchamp, vastly experienced driver, hark back 20 years or so to FIA GT days with Anthony Kumpen in things like Vipers and then Corvettes, but Zolder 24 winner, Spa 24 winner. There for second place, Peter Cox and Rupert Atzberger make their way onto the podium. The hugely experienced Dutch driver Peter Cox then with his trophy. And then for the top step out of the Pro-Am class, Anders Fjordback, and having his first ever race not only at Hockenheim but in Germany no less, despite the fact that he's in his late 60s now. Mark Patterson, great drive in the first stint, and there for Anders Fjordback a second victory of the season as he stands on the top step of the podium at the end of race 1 for the Fanatec Gt2 European Series. A great drive by the high-class racing duo. So well done to the top 3 crews in Pro-Am, and as they make their way from the podium, that will be now made ready for the drivers for the Am competition. And in a moment they will be called forward, and it is going to be for the Fanatec Motorsports squad, the Christoph Ulrich and Christoph Lenz, who will make their way onto the podium. The KTM that started on the front row of the grid to be only 3rd in class and 9th overall doesn't really tell the whole story of the race for them, but it was the first 2 laps with a spin on each that rather did for that combination. For second place, then the hugely experienced Hans Stuck, along with Chris Rosenberger, will step forward. Hans Stuck still going strong, still as enthusiastic as ever. Had a spin at Monza, kept out of trouble here, and Hans Stuck then onto the podium, thumbs up. And then for the top step, the one soloist in that, Oliver Freimuth, who will go onto the top step of the podium and celebrate a victory. And Oliver Freimuth, still in his Super Trofeo Championship overalls from last year, is there, a happy man, and will be first time out, the only man with a 100% record. So it's his first race in the series and a maiden victory. Oliver Freimuth then for AKF Motorsport wins the AM class. So well done, Oliver Freimuth, who, as I say, wins the AM class, and the drivers then make their way from the podium. They have got, in some cases, time to debrief. In others, a lot of hard work to do to get cars ready for the second race of the day. And there is Hans Stuck, ever the great character. There's barely anything, really, that Stucky hasn't raced over the years, and it's great that he's still keen to go racing even now. Well, Hockenheim looked a lot drier than it did about an hour ago, and it's going to give us, no doubt, an interesting second race a little bit later on in the day. So we look forward to seeing whether it is going to be a double for Mark Patterson and Anders Feuerbach. Race 2 coming up a little bit later on in the afternoon for the Fanatec Gt2 European Series. There's much for the teams to go and discuss, much for race control to discuss, and Chaz Draycott and David Addison will be with you for race 2 later on. Bye for now.